Luigi Mangione, the young man accused of taking out United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The corporate media has largely assumed he's guilty until proven innocent, while many other people are not so convinced. And in all fairness, history has shown us several instances where the person accused of committing the crime either didn't do it, was brainwashed into doing it, or participated willingly to some capacity but was put up to it by a more powerful organization that used them as a scapegoat. This is something that many of us would have found absurd many years ago, but with every declassified document, whistleblower, or death by confession, it becomes harder and harder to take things at face value, especially when those things involve people of extreme wealth, power, or influence. The Luigi Mangione case is one of those stories that seems very straightforward on the face of it, but the more research I did, the more questions I had. I spent over 50 hours researching about Luigi Mangione, and the one thing I can say for certain is we are not being told the full story. I noticed some inconsistencies that I haven't seen anyone else discuss, and I want to share those with you in this video. Hello everyone, if you're a new viewer, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If this is your second, third, fourth time watching one of my videos and you are not yet subscribed, we already go together. Okay, make it official and hit that subscribe button. Today we are talking about Luigi Mangione. My goal for this video is not to persuade you that he is innocent or guilty. You can decide that for yourself. I just want to share with all of you lovely people the inconsistencies in reporting and the convenient coincidences I noticed when I was looking into the Luigi story. I'm going to break down this video into two sections. The first section is going to consist of background information about Luigi and what he was up to before this crime happened. And in the second half, I'm going to be talking about the timeline of the crime, information from the investigation, as well as inconsistencies that I have noticed in the reporting. And I also found a very interesting piece of information. Everyone is looking at Nancy Pelosi and theorizing that she put a hit out on Brian Thompson because she made suspicious investments before the shooting, and Nancy Pelosi has been known to do insider trading, but there's someone that I noticed who also may have benefited from Brian Thompson's death, and they sold a significant amount of stocks in the weeks before the shooting, and no one's brought up that person's name, so I want to talk about that at the end of the video. Also, I will have timestamps in the comment section down below so you can see the topics that I will be discussing. Also, I'll have links for some of the documents that I will be referring to in this video in the comment section down below, just so you know.
Good to know.
Luigi Mangione is currently 26 years old and comes from a prominent and wealthy Maryland family. His grandfather was a successful and wealthy real estate developer who passed the businesses on to his children. The Mangiones own Hayfield Country Club, Turf Valley Resort, Lorianne Health Services, the WCBM radio station, as well as the Mangione Family Foundation. Luigi's cousin, Nino Mangione, is a Republican member of the Maryland House of Delegates. So Luigi's family is full of high achievers, but so is he. Luigi attended a private boys' school as a teen and was the valedictorian of his class in 2016. All of his friends say he was popular, well-liked, kind, and very intelligent. After graduating high school, he attended the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League school, where he received a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering. And after graduating from university in 2020, he began working at TrueCar as a data engineer. Luigi's position was remote, and so in January of 2022, he moved to Hawaii, where he began living at Surf Break, a co-living space in Honolulu. According to his friend RJ Martin, whom he met at Surf Break, Luigi enjoyed surfing but often had difficulties participating due to severe back pain he had since childhood. Luigi suffered from a condition called spondylolisthesis.
Spondylolisthesis.
That thing. It has been reported that in 2022, while surfing in Hawaii, Luigi suffered a severe back injury that required medical intervention. In June of 2022, Luigi left Surf Break and returned to mainland America to have consultations regarding his back. Luigi then returned to Hawaii, but this time he didn't return to Surf Break. Instead, he rented a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment that was in close proximity to Surf Break. This is interesting because I've not heard anything about him having a roommate. So I do think it's a bit odd that he lived in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. He doesn't strike me as someone who as a single person would want to get such a large apartment. Also, the court documents related to his arrest in Pennsylvania have an incomplete address. It has everything but the unit number for his apartment. Well, that's interesting. In July of 2023, he once again left Hawaii for mainland America to undergo back surgery. According to Luigi's friend RJ Martin, when he texted Luigi after the surgery, Luigi sent him photos of his x-ray. RJ Martin responded by asking Luigi how he was feeling, and Luigi texted back, "So, long story, we'll fill you in person. Back in Hawaii as soon as I can. I have to figure out some spine stuff here." So this was reported in the New York Times. They did an interview with RJ Martin, and that was the information that RJ provided to the New York Times. But internet investigators found Luigi's Reddit account, which had been active for 8 years, and Luigi had been pretty open about his life and back condition on his Reddit account. He spoke about the pain that he was experiencing prior to surgery, and he shared that his surgery had been a success. Quote, "Athletic success stories. It can be easy to get caught up in the plethora of horror stories on the internet. When my spondy went bad on me last year, it was completely devastating as a young athletic person. Seemingly, all I could read on the internet was that I was destined to chronic pain and a desk job for the rest of my life. That representation was terrifying, inaccurate, and completely destroyed me until I realized the silent majority of fusions are highly successful. Hoping this can help others who find themselves in the same place. This is not to encourage surgery per se, but just to provide reassurance that athletic life is totally normal after fusion if or when the surgery is necessary. This list has more success stories than anyone probably wants to read through. That's kind of the point. There's tons." In other posts, he mentioned needing 0 pain meds, and he also wrote this: "The surgery wasn't nearly as scary as I made it out to be in my head, and I knew it was the right decision within a week." One thing that I noticed in the mainstream media is that they are painting him out to be someone who was still suffering from extreme pain. This extreme pain caused him to be deranged and angry, and in an act of retaliation about his back pain, he shot Brian Thompson in the back. But in his own Reddit post, he said the back surgery completely resolved his back pain, and he didn't seem at all resentful or bitter about it. As a matter of fact, he was very optimistic about it, and he shared resources for other people who suffered with the same conditions. I noticed quite a few times the information that I read about Luigi in major publications was verifiably false. Like, to give an example, a conspiracy theory that has been floating around the internet is that Luigi couldn't possibly be the shooter because Luigi is left-handed. And in the surveillance video, the shooter is using their right hand. Where did people get the idea that Luigi is left-handed?
So then something told me to dig a little deeper, and I saw this article that says he talked about a disturbing claim about the cruel way his mother made him eat.
The Daily Mail found one of Luigi's book reviews on a website called Goodreads, and in Luigi's review, he mentions that as a child, he had disputes with his mother about what hand he held the knife in when cutting steak at the dinner table. A Daily Mail contributor wrote this in an article, quote, "The suspected killer of United Healthcare CEO Luigi Mangione claimed his mother made him eat steak with his right hand even though he is left-handed." So people took this line from the Daily Mail and they ran with it. And they're making all these TikTok videos and Instagram videos based off of that headline, but it's not true. Here is the exact quote from Luigi's review on Goodreads, quote, "I'm reminded of a long-standing debate at my childhood dinner table. Whenever we'd eat steak, I would use my knife in my left hand and my fork in my right, which would infuriate my mother. She'd remind me to cut with my right hand since I was right-handed, and to switch my fork to my right hand for each bite." So yes, Luigi is right-handed, and there is footage of Luigi in court writing with his right hand. So the Daily Mail had misreported that information, and misreporting happens more often than you think. And so if you're like me and you enjoy reading the news and you're looking for a way to better discern which news articles are highly factual from the ones that aren't, then you will enjoy the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News is the world's first news comparison platform. They're an app and website that brings together related stories in one place to highlight important perspectives often overlooked by mainstream media. They also provide context on each source's political bias and ownership to help readers see how these factors influence the framing of a story or whether it gets reported at all. While exploring Ground News with my Vantage subscription, I came across this story. Trump signs order to delay TikTok ban for 75 days. This story is being reported by 413 sources, 32% left-leaning, 46% centrist, and 22% right-leaning. So we can see this story is being most often reported by nonpartisan sources, and if we compare the headlines, we can contrast how it is being reported. For example, right-leaning and centrist organizations wrote very straightforward headlines like this: Trump extends TikTok ban to 75 days, but why? In comparison to the left publications, which had headlines like this: Trump tried to ban TikTok, now he's its hero. What happened? The left is more critical of the policy, whereas right and centrist sources are more neutral on the topic. Another unique feature that Ground News has, which I love, is the blind spot feature. A blind spot is a news story that has political undertones and is disproportionately covered by media sources on one side of the political spectrum. For example, this story is being underreported by the right. New York governor proposes banning cell phones in schools starting next fall. 54% of the sources are left-leaning, 31% are centrist, and only 15% are right-leaning. Or this story, which is being underreported by the left. Trump says he will quickly release JFK, Robert Kennedy, MLK assassination files. 47% of the sources are right-leaning, 42% are centrist, while only 11% are right-leaning. I wonder why. I really enjoy using Ground News because everything is presented in such an organized and straightforward way with multiple sources to help you easily draw your own conclusions. And in a world where it feels like everyone has a political agenda, it's refreshing to have a platform that is completely neutral. I'm excited to offer my viewers 40% off a Ground News Vantage subscription, which is the same plan that I use to access all of their amazing features. To take advantage of this massive discount, go to ground.news/NCS, scan the QR code, or click the link in the description box down below to subscribe for $5 a month. Subscribing not only supports my work, you're also supporting an independent platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. A special thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. So back to Luigi. After his back surgery, he returned to Hawaii, where he did some traveling around Hawaii, and during this time, he was still active on social media and he was still in contact with his friends. As sometime in 2023, Luigi Mangione's employment with TrueCar ended, and I'm not sure if he quit or he was let go, but the company did lay off 24% of their staff during this time, and it is possible that Luigi was a part of that group, but nonetheless, as of 2023, he no longer worked there. However, he never updated his LinkedIn profile. So presumably during this time, he was unemployed and his family was likely unaware. In the spring of 2024, Luigi ended up leaving Hawaii and traveling through Asia. During this time, Luigi became a fan of writer Gurwinder Gopal. The two had exchanged emails and even had a 2-hour conversation.
What was your impression of him?
He seemed like a really down-to-earth guy. I mean, he was polite, he was thoughtful, he was open-minded. He seemed very curious. Curious was a very particular thing about him. He always wanted to know more about things, and sometimes I'd make an obscure reference to something and he would tell me to tell him more about it. So he was very interested in learning and he was very interested in self-improvement.
He also, I know in conversations, and as you know, Gurwinder, he had posted about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. You also had a chance to talk to him about Kaczynski. What did he say to you?
So one of the things about Luigi was that he was afraid of losing agency. He was afraid that technology was going to take people's agency away. He actually believed that this was already happening. And so he became interested in Kaczynski's work for this reason, because Kaczynski also believed this. And a lot of the conversation that we had was really about, how technology is taking people's agency away from them. So that was something that resonated with him about Kaczynski's work. And he also believed social media addiction was a big problem that was taking people's agency away from them as well. He feared this was happening to him as well. And one of the topics of the conversation, was about, he wanted advice from me on how he could sort of reclaim some agency.
And so he reaches out to you and you have a video call. And I know the video call went nearly 2 hours. This was in May, which is really important timing, Gurwinder, because this is right before he he sort of went off the grid or went missing in early July, as far as we understand it. Was there anything in that call that now you see what has happened stands out to you in retrospect?
I can't say that I would have really predicted his behavior from that video call. He did allude to his frustrations with the US healthcare system. He said that the US healthcare system was really expensive. And I told him about the NHS because here in the UK, we have a free healthcare system. And he kind of seemed to idolize the UK's healthcare system. And I told him it wasn't quite simple because although it was great, I'm a big fan of universal healthcare. I said that it's not quite as simple as that because we have big waiting lists in the UK. So, there's a bit of a trade-off. But I did say that the UK system was better than the US one. And he agreed with that.
Do you have any sense of what might have led to him at that point distancing himself from his family and friends?
There was a part of the conversation where he said that the people around him were not on his wavelength and he was eager for a community of like-minded people. And that was one of the reasons why he wanted to talk to me, because he felt that I was a kindred spirit.
Luigi's friend RJ Martin says the last text he sent to Luigi was on May 20th, 2024, when he texted him, "Yo, you awake?" and received no response. On June 23rd, 2024, he texted Luigi again, "Where in the world are you?" And once again, he didn't receive a response. Luigi's last Twitter post was on June 10th, 2024, where he shared a link to Andrew Huberman's podcast about smartphones and mental health. June 10th was also the same day he last contacted Gurwinder Gopal.
And regarding the final message that I received from him, so that was on June the 10th, and that was a DM via Twitter in which he asked me to help him with his social media feed. He wanted me to help him sort of curate his feed and maybe to write a guide for him. And I said that I would get back to him, but at that time I was writing something on commission, so I was kind of deep in that. But I told him I'd get back to him. And then I just kind of forgot all about it. And that was it. That was the last I heard from him.
After June 10th, 2024, Luigi's digital footprint went cold. And the last known person to speak to him was his mother, who says she spoke to him on July 1st, 2024. And his last known address was his apartment in Honolulu, Hawaii. Throughout the summer, no one heard from him. He didn't respond to text messages, nor social media messages. He didn't post anything. And it wasn't until 5 months later, on November 18th, 2024, that his mother, Kathleen Mangione, finally filed a missing persons report in San Francisco, which is odd. His family lives in Maryland, and Luigi lived in Honolulu, Hawaii. And he lived there for a considerable amount of time. He had been there for like 2 years. So it's weird that his mother filed the missing persons report in San Francisco. I'm guessing the reason she filed the missing persons report in San Francisco is because she still believed that Luigi worked for TrueCar. But that still doesn't make sense to me because Luigi worked as a remote employee. He worked from his home in Hawaii for 2 years at that point. So what reason did she have to believe that he was living in San Francisco? In her missing persons report, she provided the address 124 Montgomery. That is it. Not 124 Montgomery Road, 124 Montgomery Street, 124 Montgomery Avenue, just 124 Montgomery. In her report, she indicated to the police that this location was his employer's location, but it had been permanently closed and that the main number was disconnected. TrueCar has never had an office at 124 Montgomery anything. That's weird. Back in 2015, they announced a new office location at 140 New Montgomery Tower, but they moved out of that location back in 2019, long before Luigi ever worked there. If you go on their website, it says that their head office is in Santa Monica. So the mystery is, why did she give the police the address 124 Montgomery? Furthermore, there is no such thing as a 124 Montgomery in San Francisco. It doesn't exist.
Your thoughts? What?
Yes, there is a 120 Montgomery Street and there is a 130 Montgomery Street, but there is no 124. And just to be sure, I asked good old ChatGPT and it confirmed it is not a known address. Why did his mother report him missing and give a fake address? This is not adding up. I used a calculator, an abacus, and a tally sheet, and I can confirm that this doesn't add up. Yeah, this shit makes no sense. The innocent explanation is that this woman is absolutely oblivious, and she never has conversations with her son. Maybe Luigi gave her a fake address and she wasn't intelligent enough to figure out that it was a fake address, and she was too stupid to go on the company's website and confirm the correct contact information for the employer of her son that she hadn't spoken to in 5 months. And maybe she is so oblivious that she had no idea he was living in Hawaii. For the last 2 years, she didn't notice his LinkedIn said he lived in Hawaii. His Goodreads account says he lives in Hawaii. His Twitter said he lived in Hawaii. He has tons of pictures where he is in Hawaii. She was so oblivious. All of that went over her head. That's the innocent explanation. She knows absolutely nothing about her son. But then she also said that she could see him doing something like this.
The original missing report took place back in November 18th in San Francisco. The sergeant that was involved in that case reached out to the San Francisco field office and said, hey, basically, I'm working on a missing case. I saw the photograph that was distributed by the NYPD. There bears a resemblance. That tip was forwarded to us close to 45 hours after the incident took place. It showed up to a TFO, which is a task force officer. We have NYPD officers embedded with the FBI. They received that tip. It was one of 4 tips that they had received that day, and they were vetting it. Part of that vetting process was that they reached out to Mangione's mother in San Francisco very late on the 7th. They had a conversation where she didn't indicate that it was her son in the photograph, but she said it might be something that she could see him doing. So that information was going to be passed along to the detectives the next morning. But fortunately, we apprehended him before we could act on that.
How can she say she can see him doing something like this, but then she knows absolutely nothing about him? Make that make sense. The missing persons report that she filed just 2 weeks before the shooting with the fake address was used to help identify Luigi. According to law enforcement, before Luigi was arrested at the McDonald's in Pennsylvania, he was already a person of interest because they matched his missing persons report in San Francisco to the surveillance photos all the way in New York.
Halfway.
There are thousands of people who resemble the person in that photo. Thousands of tips called in, but somehow they just knew it was Luigi.
That just makes no fucking sense. I mean, it's just bullshit.
According to the official criminal complaint, here is the timeline of events. On November 24th, 2024, at approximately 10:11 p.m., the shooter arrived in New York City on an intercity bus at the Port Authority bus terminal in Manhattan. The bus originated in Atlanta, Georgia. The shooter took a taxi to the area around the Midtown Hotel and stayed in the area for approximately 1 hour before taking another taxi to a hostel located in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. So they don't mention the name of the hostel in the criminal complaint, but it has been reported that he stayed at the High New York City hostel. This shooter registered at the hostel under the name Mark Rosario and provided a false New Jersey's driver's license as a form of identification. When the shooter was checking in at the hostel, the desk clerk asked the shooter to remove his mask, which he did, revealing his face to a security camera as shown below. Other than this interaction with the desk clerk, the shooter consistently kept his mask on throughout his time in New York, including while inside the hostel. Now, this is interesting because in the media it was reported that she was flirting with him, and that's why he took the mask down. Given the wording of the criminal complaint, it can be inferred that she asked him to remove his mask as a part of the check-in process to verify that he is the same person in the ID. However, if they were flirting, those are two very different circumstances, because if she was flirting with him and just wanted to see if he was cute, maybe she wasn't paying all that much attention to whether the person in front of her resembled the person in the ID. However, if the explicit purpose was to verify that the faces matched, and that's why she asked him to remove the mask, then presumably she would have verified that the person in the ID resembled the person standing in front of her. The criminal complaint doesn't specify whether the hostel worker verified that the faces matched, nor does it mention the flirting. It was mentioned in the media, so I just expected it to be mentioned in the criminal complaint. So now the complaint jumps to December 4th. So the suspect was in New York from November 24th to December 4th, and we haven't heard anything about what the suspect was up to for 12 days. That is a long time that hasn't been accounted for. What was he using to brush his teeth? Did he wear the same outfit every day? Or did he have other clothing? Where are the rest of his belongings? The police found a cell phone that they believe belonged to the suspect. Did he use it during the 12 days he was in New York? Did he meet up with anybody? Like, there's a lot of things that I'm very curious to know that we haven't learned yet. Like, what was he up to for 12 days? Why was it necessary to go almost 2 weeks in advance? Like, it's just so weird to me that he was there for so long. I would expect a hitman to be there for only the necessary amount of time. Like, 12 days is a lot. On December 4th, 2024, at approximately 5:35 a.m., the shooter left the hostel wearing the gray backpack and rode an electric bicycle down Central Park West to a location near the Midtown Hotel as shown below. At approximately 5:41 a.m., the shooter walked around the area of the Midtown Hotel and at one point purchased items from a nearby coffee shop. So I have seen people make the argument that it is impossible for the suspect to have gotten to the location so quickly. According to the criminal complaint, the suspect traveled from the hostel to the Hilton Hotel in approximately 6 minutes. And I did the math and it is technically mathematically possible. The hostel is approximately 3.2 miles away from the Midtown Hilton Hotel based on the route that he took. And in New York, the maximum speed permitted on an e-bike is 30 miles per hour. So assuming the suspect was using an e-bike that goes 30 miles per hour, it would have taken them 6.4 minutes to travel that distance. So yes, it is mathematically possible. That means the person never stopped for a red light, never had to slow down to avoid hitting people or cars, that they had a clear path for 30 miles per hour the whole way there in one of the busiest cities in the world. The shooter then returned to a bench in the vicinity of the Midtown Hotel. On at least one occasion prior to the murder, the shooter was depicted using a cell phone. Now, they don't include this in the criminal complaint, but the police provided footage to ABC News of the shooter coming out of the subway at 57th Street at 6:15 a.m.
6:15 a.m. In this surveillance footage, police sources tell ABC News an individual who appears to be the suspect is seen leaving a subway station just 3 blocks away from where the crime would unfold moments later.
What was this person doing in the subway? Like, they were riding an e-bike on the way there and they ended up leaving on the e-bike. So why were they in the subway? And if they were waiting for Brian Thompson to arrive and they were not sure at what time he was going to be there, why leave and go in an underground subway 2 blocks away from where the shooting eventually happened? To me, these are the movements of someone who knew when Brian was going to be entering the Hilton. If he wasn't sure when or how Brian was going to be arriving, why leave the area? At approximately 6:45 a.m., after waiting near the Midtown Hotel for approximately an hour, the shooter saw and approached the victim, shot the victim multiple times, and then fled on foot to West 55th Street, where the shooter mounted the electric bicycle and rode towards Central Park. After disappearing inside the park for a period of time, the shooter was captured on video again, exiting the park. When he emerged from the park, the shooter was no longer carrying the gray backpack, as shown below. As of the making of this video, the bike has not been recovered, but somehow they found the backpack, which is very weird. So a couple of things that I want to point out. The conference was scheduled to begin at 8 a.m. and Brian Thompson arrived over an hour early. So how did the shooter know to come out of the subway in time to catch Brian walking down the street? I don't think it was a lucky guess. Plus, we did see footage of them using a phone. Secondly, there are 2 entrances to get into the Hilton Hotel. One is on 53rd Avenue and the other is on 54th Avenue. How did the shooter know which one Brian would be at? The conference was held at the Hilton Hotel. However, it has been reported that Brian stayed at the Marriott. It's strange to me that he didn't just stay at the same hotel that the conference was being held at. He could afford to stay at the Hilton. I mean, he's rich, and I'm sure it would have been a tax write-off anyways. So why not just stay at the same hotel and not have to worry about getting up earlier and having to walk and take a cab? Did someone else book the hotel for him? Did someone else influence him into choosing the Marriott? Why was he at the Marriott? Also, if you consider where Brian was coming from, the Marriott, the entrance at 53rd Avenue was closer, but he was shot on 54th Avenue, and in the video, he is walking past the entrance. So he wasn't even entering the conference center. Where was he going? Was he going to meet up with someone? Like, these are important questions because To me, this looks like he was set up. At approximately 7:04 a.m., the shooter entered a taxi that drove him to the George Washington Bridge bus terminal in the vicinity of West 179th Street and Fort Washington Avenue in Upper Manhattan. The shooter's face was captured by a camera in the taxi as shown below. Now, people have argued that the eyebrows don't match. The day Luigi was arrested in Altoona, this photo was published. When you put the photos side by side, it appears that these eyebrows and those eyebrows are not the same eyebrows. Guys, what do you think? On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that these two people are one and the same? 10 being he did that shit, or 1 being
Free Luigi!
Comment down below. On or about December 6, 2024, law enforcement officers searching Central Park found a gray backpack matching the appearance of the gray backpack worn by the shooter. When they picked up Luigi in Altoona, he had a backpack as well, and I'm curious to know if it's the same brand as this one because the police have asserted that when they arrested Luigi, he had a Faraday backpack, and they argued that that indicated criminal intent and sophistication. And for those of you who are not familiar, a Faraday backpack or a Faraday anything is designed to block signals. So if he had a cell phone or a laptop in a Faraday backpack, it presumably would have been impossible to track his movements. Now, Luigi says that's not true. He had a waterproof backpack, not a Faraday backpack. This bag is not a Faraday bag. If the suspect was going to use a Faraday backpack, I would expect that this one would have been a Faraday backpack because this is the one that they were walking around with. So I question whether they're being honest about his other backpack being a Faraday backpack because, I mean, this one isn't. Also, when the police located the backpack, they found a Tommy Hilfiger jacket inside as well as Monopoly money, but no manifesto and no weapon. On December 9th, 2024, at approximately 9:14 a.m., a worker at a fast food restaurant in Altoona, Pennsylvania, called the police about a male customer later identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione, the defendant who the worker believed resembled photos of the shooter that had been broadcast in the media following the victim's murder. So another thing that is interesting, it was a customer dining in the restaurant who approached the employees and said, "Hey, that guy over there looks like that wanted guy in the photos. Call the cops." The restaurant called the cops. The patron themselves didn't call the police. They got someone else to do it, which is interesting because there was a reward for $60,000 for information that led to the arrest and conviction of the killer. The police have not released the identity of the McDonald's employee or the customer whose tip led to the arrest. Now, this witness, who is not the person who gave the tip, says he and his friends noticed Luigi and they began speculating that he was perhaps the guy who was wanted.
It started out almost a little bit like a joke that we thought, or my one friend thought he looked like the shooter. He probably heard us. That surprised me. He stayed there as long as he did.
If Luigi did hear them speculating that he was the shooter, if he truly did it, why not just leave? People have speculated that he wanted to get caught, and it's possible. But if he wants to get caught, like, why bother use a fake ID? Why bother use a ghost gun? Why walk around in a mask for 12 days? Like, why bother leave the scene of the crime and go on the run? If you want to get caught, you could just stay there. Members of the Altoona Police Department responded and encountered Mangione, who they also believed matched the appearance of the shooter. When approached by responding officers and asked for identification, Mangione offered the false New Jersey ID used by the shooter to check into the hostel. Mangione was later found to be in possession of a loaded 9mm pistol and a silencer consistent with the weapon used to kill the victim, clothing that matched apparel that the shooter wore in the security camera videos, a notebook, several thousands of dollars in cash, an envelope associated with an FDIC-insured bank, and a letter addressed to the feds. So the killer was so meticulous with all their planning. They were so careful to walk around with a face mask, but then they kept all the necessary evidence to be convicted on their person.
That's suspicious.
Luigi has said that the cash was planted on him. Also, when the Pennsylvania police detained Luigi, according to their own official documents from the government website, they didn't take fingerprints or DNA. If any law enforcement or lawyers are watching this, let me know if that's normal. I know he was going to be extradited to New York eventually, but shouldn't they have still at least taken his fingerprints at minimum? I spent a lot of time looking through Luigi's Twitter, his Reddit posts, his reviews on Goodreads, and he is very clearly intelligent and intentional when he writes. He uses sophisticated language, proper sentence structure, proper grammar, little to no spelling mistakes. Most often, his writing is very formal, and here's an example of a Twitter post. Just saw that you are a Legion athlete. Makes sense. I was thinking this thread was a great compilation of the best ideas from Bigger, Leaner, Stronger, Huberman Lab, and Direct Learned Experience. So he forgot to put a period at the end of the sentence, but other than that, his Twitter post is written very formally, especially for a Twitter post, with proper capitalizations, proper sentence structure, and proper spelling, and this is a common theme in his online writings. Now, here is a little bit of the manifesto. Quote, "To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial. Some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience." The last sentence stood out to me because the writer didn't use the word and. It should say some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, and a lot of patience. Also, how convenient that the letter says that they were working alone when they were on the phone leading up to the shooting. Here is another excerpt, a reminder. The US has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly number 42 in life expectancy. United is the largest company in the US by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but as our life expectancy. Once again, the word and was missing where it should have been, and there is a typo. Now, it's possible the person who reposted the manifesto online made an error when transcribing it, but if they just showed us the handwritten letter, then we would know for sure. It makes me wonder if they're hiding it because Luigi's handwriting is all over the internet and maybe they don't want us to compare the calligraphy. At the end of the day, because so much of his writing is available online, if they really wanted to forge a letter with his handwriting, they could very easily do so. Now, I'm just a regular person who doesn't know him, and even to me, this seems to be two separate authors, but someone else who actually knows him also said it doesn't sound like him.
But then you go on to say that the manifesto, you felt that it wasn't as intellectually strong as the person whom you had interacted with.
So the impression I got of Luigi when I spoke to him was that he was a very assiduous person. He was somebody who was very careful. He did his research. He didn't tend to have strong opinions until he had actually researched something well. That was my impression of him. The manifesto is just sort of, it seems like it was written by a high schooler. Some of the sort of claims in it seem to have been lifted from an outdated page on Wikipedia. And it also cites Michael Moore as a source. And Michael Moore is a propagandist. It's really low quality information. And I would not have thought that the Luigi that I know of, at least, would have been sort of convinced by something like a Michael Moore documentary.
This is all very weird, and people have speculated that perhaps Nancy Pelosi put a hit out on Brian Thompson. The rumor on the internet was that Brian was going to testify against her in an insider trading investigation. Now, I have not been able to substantiate that Nancy Pelosi is or has ever been investigated for the crimes that we all know she's been committing, her and her husband, allegedly. Snopes debunks why the rumors about Nancy Pelosi are unfounded, and I have linked them down below if you want to read it for yourself. And their explanation does make sense, so I accept it, but prior to Brian's death, he was under investigation for insider trading himself. The City of Hollywood Firefighters Pension Fund filed a lawsuit in May 2024 against United Health, alleging that executives, including the recently murdered Brian Thompson, had sold shares of United Health on non-public information, damaging the financial position of the pension. According to this suit, United Health announced it would acquire Change Healthcare in January 2021. In February 2022, the Department of Justice filed to prevent this merger. The DOJ argued that Change is the leading source of key technologies that United's health insurance rivals rely on to compete with United. United Health answered by creating a data firewall between itself and Change in May 2022, such such that it could not exploit this data in an anti-competitive manner. The company would win the lawsuit that DOJ filed, and primarily on this basis. However, the DOJ reopened their investigation, and United Health became aware of this in October of 2023, according to the suit. So once the DOJ decided to reopen its investigation, Brian Thompson, Andrew Whitty, and Stephen Hemsley decided to start selling millions of dollars worth of shares. And this is insider trading because they were selling these shares because they got information that nobody else had. The information being that the DOJ had reopened their investigation. The lawsuit stated that in the 4 months between learning about the DOJ investigation and the investigation becoming public, United Health's chairman Stephen Hemsley sold over $102 million of his personally held United shares, and Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, sold over $15 million of his personally held United Health shares. So these 3 men were co-defendants in this lawsuit. Now, a few weeks before Brian Thompson was killed, his co-defendant, Stephen Hemsley, made a bona fide gift to someone. I don't know who. It doesn't say on the SEC filings, but he gifted 8,000 shares to someone. These shares were worth over $5 million the day that he gifted them. Who received them? This may or may not be relevant to what happened to his co-defendant, Brian Thompson. We don't know. But at a minimum, I think it needs to be investigated. November 11th, these shares are gifted. November 18th, Luigi's mom files that suspicious missing persons report. November 24th, the suspect arrives in Manhattan. And then on December 4th, the shooting happens. Yeah, this whole thing stinks. Regardless of who did this, it's unlikely that they acted alone. The phone calls, the perfect timing, the knowing the correct entrance. Brian Thompson was set up, in my humble opinion, and I didn't even touch on the possibility of Luigi being a victim of MK Ultra. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with MK Ultra, I'm not going to go over it in this video. Like, we're done here, okay? But there are tons of documentaries here on YouTube, and I highly suggest you watch them. And you should also look into Sirhan Sirhan, the man accused of shooting Robert Kennedy. That's all I have. Anyways, what do you guys think about all of this? What do you guys think of Luigi? I have included links in the comment section down below if you want to check out some of this information for yourself. I also have the link to my sponsor, Ground News. So if you would like to support my channel, go check out Ground News. I also have the links to my social media in the description box down below. If you would like to support my channel directly, my link to Patreon is right down there. I worked very hard on this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And a free way that you can help me is that if you enjoyed this video and you think you know someone else who will enjoy it also, please share it. If you like when I do these deep dive videos, let me know in the comment section down below. And if you have topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send me a message on my email, Instagram, Patreon, wherever, okay? If you like this video and you'd like to see more like it, I will have 2 more videos for you in the end cards. I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.